Good evening. Hope you're all well. Today we're learning Maseches Kesubos Daf Ayin Hey, a day where I request your maturity. As we learn some Gemaras that are very difficult to explain. Text, you cannot sit at that table. Go sit at another table. We are recording, and by the way, you should know that when we get to this sugya, the art scroll has 0 comments on it. 0. And it's like, as we say in Rashi, Omer Dorsheni, like it's begging for interpretation. The Gemara is very complex, not in its reading, but in its deeper meanings. And I'll just share one Maharam Shif, one of the Achronim, who speaks about this Gemara when we get there. But before that, we've been discussing the concept of getting married with a condition, with a t'nai of a woman not having nedarim. And we are now four lines down, last words on the line on Ayin Hamid Aleph. And the Gemara quotes what we had seen earlier, what we saw yesterday. Rav Meir Omer kol neder shetzarech hakiras chacham lo yachzir. That if a man divorces a woman, and if there's a neder that needed chakiras chacham, that she had to go to Bezdin, they cannot remarry. Rabbi Lazar Omer lo asru tzarich ela mipnei she'eno tzarich. That we don't forbid the tzarich, the case of a woman who needs a chakiras chacham, because because of she'eno tzarich, because of a woman who doesn't need it, which we explained yesterday was basically his opinion that there's no way to get back into that marriage no matter what. And b'mai kamiflage, what did we say yesterday was the machlokes between them? Rav Meir Savar Adam Rotza shetispaze ishto bebezdin. Rav Meir was of the opinion that it's acceptable for him, and it was within his mindset that his wife should go to be matir neder, and if she were to be matir neder, even though it's somewhat of a bizayon for her, that would allow them to be married. That would be a valid kedushin if she removed her nedar. Haret mekudeshesli b'tnai that you have no nedarim. She goes to Bezdin. The Bezdin gets rid of the nedarim. Shalom Yisrael, everything's fine and good. However, Rebbe Lazar Savar ein adam rotza shetispaze ishto bebezdin, because fundamentally Rebbe Lazar does not want his wife to be uncomfortable. So therefore, even if she goes to get a hataras nedarim, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because that's not what the husband wanted. That wasn't built into his t'nai. So fundamentally speaking, what's going on in this machlokes is, what is our standing assumption about his intent? Would he be okay if she was matir neder, yes or no? Or no, is he being categorical and saying, if you are a woman who has nedarim, I just don't want to marry you. Even if you're matir neder, I'm not interested. Fine. Now, Rava Amar, and this Gemara would be very complicated without Rashi. Rava Amar, what was Rava talking about? Look at the very top line of Rashi, second Rashi di Brahmaskal, Rava Amar. Rava says, Hadikatani etzel chacham v'hitira ve'ena mikudeshes, that if she goes to a chacham to get a hataras nedarim that they're not married, what was that talking about? Back in the Gemara, 10 lines down on Ayin Hey Amid Aleph, the Gemara says that's be'isha chashuva askinan. That's talking about a chashuv woman. To Amar, where he says, Lo nichali the itzar b'krovo seha. He says the reason why she's eina mikudeshes, we don't even want that marriage to start, because if that marriage starts and she's an adranis and she's constantly making the dharm, they're going to end up getting divorced, and then he won't only be restricted to her, but he'll be restricted to her immediate female family members. He can't marry them either. Eina mikudeshes out of the gates, because in his head that kedushin should not work. It's not that the mechanics of the kedushin can't work; it's that his ratzon is not that way. So the conditions have to be based on his ratzon, and therefore they're not married. The Gemara says that's not a good response. If that's true, why wouldn't it be true in the opposite direction as well? Seifa de Katani, in the end of the bride, so what does it say? Abalhu, in regards to the husband, shahalach etzel chacham v'hitiro. Let's say that the husband says, I'm going to marry you on condition that I don't have any nedarim on himself. So says the Gemara, if that's true and he's matir neder, or if he's etzel rofe v'ripei, so, or if he made a condition about his health and then he heals himself, there the Gemara says mikudeshes. But why would it be mikudeshes? Listen, ain't a mikudeshes. It should be no different than the case of the woman. I don't want to be usher to his relative. So why isn't it true in both directions? And then the Gemara drops a bomb. This idea in the Gemara is a psychology, and it has halachic implications about the difference between men and women as it relates to marriage. The Gemara says, Ihi, the reason why we distinguish between a man and a woman is because Ihi, she, b'chol dehu nichala. She'll marry basically any, it's kind of like, if you're above a minimal threshold, she'll marry you. You don't have to be such a gishmak guy. You have to be enough. You have to be enough of a gavra. Kid the Reish Lakish. What does Reish Lakish say? To Amar Reish Lakish, Tab lemesav tandu milemesav armalu. She would rather sit there with two warm bodies, just her and her husband, even though he's not such a great guy, than to be single. She'd rather just have a somebody than have a nobody. That's what the Gemara says about her, which isn't true about him. His psychology is different, and he is going to have a different standard. That's what the Gemara says. And the Gemara gives a few examples. Abai Omar, Tishum Shimona, if there's someone who's very short, it actually literally translates as an ant or some small critter. Tishum Shimona Gavra, very small person, doesn't matter. The wife is going to be Kurse Becha Rasa Ramila. She'll bring her chair among all of the chashuv women, and she'll sit there and with her husband, with all the married women. They're all talking shaitels and strollers. And when we were first married, it took a couple of years till we had kids. But I was in the Gris Kolo. Babies were popping out every 6 days. There were babies everywhere. What was the conversation piece? Strollers, which bottles to use. Everything was baby. So that's what the Gemara is saying over here. She doesn't want to be that woman who's left out. So she's going to make sure Tavel Mesa of Tandum and the Mesa of Armla. She wants to stay married. So this guy's super short, doesn't matter. Rav Papa gave another example. Amar Denafsa Gavra. If he has a lowly profession, he's someone who cleans out wool from all of its impurities. Says the Gemara, in such a case, she'll go out and sit on the porch with her husband. She'll call her husband, "Hi, sweetheart, come sit with me out in public." And people will walk by. They'll see that she's married. Okay, he's not an A+ guy. He's a B- guy, but that's okay. They're still married. Ravashi Amar, Dekal Segavra, even if it's someone who has a bad lineage, someone who comes from a difficult family, Lo boy Talfache Lekidra, she won't even be makbid on him. Don't even bother to go get the lentils. We'll be fine. The basics. And then the Gemara closes this little section with something that's a little complicated. Tana, the Brisa writes, "V'chulan mezanos v'tolos b'valein." All of these women who are married to the B- guys, they're all going to cheat on their husbands. And when they get pregnant from the man that they cheated with, they're going to be tola on their husband. Yeah. It says kid. Oh, he looks like the neighbor? Yeah, it's my husband's. Doesn't matter. That's my husband's kid. So that's what the Gemara says, is that these women, it still is true. This is the duality of the psychology. It's tav l'mesav tandu l'mesav armalu. Better that she should be married to a somebody than to a nobody. But l'maisa, she's going to cheat. And l'maisa, she's going to get pregnant from somebody else, and she'll be told on her husband. That's what the Gemara says.
That's why you're A+ guy.
That's so sweet. I'll tell my wife that I'm an A+ guy. Okay. Maybe you should tell my wife I'm an A+ guy. I think it's a little bit more, it's a little bit more impactful than me. Yeah. That's like having my dad be like, Rachie, Phil's really a wonderful, he teaches Daf Yomi,
We'll remind him. About YouTube.
Every once in a while. Yes, I'll wave. Hello. Okay. First of the very long lines on Ayin Hey. We're going to speak about some of the mumin, some of the things that are psulim in a wife, and we'll also see in comparative sugyas to a kohen. And the Brisa writes, Tana, kol mumin sheposlan, Tana hosifu alein zeya v'shuma v'reach hapeh. If a woman has some type of sweating disorder, if she has a shuma, if she has a mole, v'reach hapeh, if she has bad breath. So the Gemara says those are problems by women. Those are mumin psulim. If a woman has perpetual bad breath, what's it called? Halitosis. Thank you.
I knew I was going to say that.
You were not going to say that. I get a phone call from Mark Halpert this week. He said, I learned a new word this week. It's called indelible. He wanted to know if I had heard of the word before. And I told Mark to read a book.
You said read an encyclopedia.
Yeah, doesn't matter. You can read either one. Just read a Gemara. That's probably true. We'll teach you vocab in this room. We'll get you.
Oh, you're working on it.
I'm working on it. Than in the previous 35. Yeah. I don't know how old you are, but give or take. But then the Gemara says, seemingly these psulim are only true by women, but asks the Gemara, Bahani b'kahane lo pasle. These should also be psulim for kohanim. After all, v'hatnan, and this part of the Mishnah is in regards to animals, hazakin, an older animal, v'achola, an animal that's ill, v'hamizuham, an animal that is very smelly, an animal that doesn't smell good, those are considered psulim. Vitznan, we also learned in addition to that, mumin elu, these mumin, bein kvu and bein over and psulim ba'adam, they also apply to man. So seemingly, even if a kohen has just terrible body odor, so then the din seemingly should be that not only is it puzzle, but mamish the avoda is puzzle. If he brings a korban for you, it's a 0. It doesn't count. It's a real psul. Well, I'm not talking about putting on deodorant. I'm talking about someone who really has a problem. So then the din is l'chora that kohen should be puzzle for avoda. Amar Rav Yossi Reb Chanina, don't worry, this is not a steer. Lokashia kan bezea overes, kan bezea she'ein overes. Sometimes people in the hot season, they smell a little bit, but during the winter season, they're totally fine. That's not the problem. We're talking about someone who has an internal medical issue. It's not temperature related. They smell bad always, 24/7. I had a kid like this in my elementary class, Shem Yirachem. It was terrible. It was terrible to be within Dalet Amos. It was just what it was. Rav Ashi Amar, your whole assumption was wrong. Remember, look at the language. We said that a woman will have a mum of zeya if she has a sweating disorder of some kind. And the next psul that we tried to compare from was mezuham, someone who smells. Asks the Gemara, zeya a mezuham karamis. These are not the same things. Sweating is not the same thing as smelling. They often come with one another. They often, it's true, but it's not necessarily the same thing. 5 lines into the white lines. In regards to Kohanim, if a person smells bad, you can use some type of wine vinegar that will, I guess that's what they used instead of Febreze. I don't know, instead of deodorant, they would get rid of the smell. It lasted a little bit and it got rid of the smell so that during that avoda, the avoda wouldn't be puzzle. And as well, if a person has bad breath, so then what can they do? Then they can take a pilpil, they can take a peppercorn and put it in their mouth, and it will it's probably an intense flavor, but it would probably get rid of the bad breath, whatever it is. It made it tolerable. Aval gabe isha, but in regards to a woman, that's different. What's she going to do? She's going to keep a peppercorn in her mouth 24/7. They live in the same house. Lo efshar, there's no way that she could circumvent that, and therefore it's considered a psul. Halitosis is a psul for marriage. What the Gemara seems to say. What about this mole? So says the Gemara, id ispa seyar, if the mole has hairs growing out of it, hacha v'hacha pasla, no matter what, that's going to be puzzle. Id lo ispe seyar, if there is no hair, ishuma gedola, if the mole is very large, and we'll qualify that soon, hacha v'hacha pasla, no matter what, it's going to be puzzle. Ishuma ketana, if it's a very small mole, hacha v'hacha lo pasla. The Tanya, it's after all, the Brisa writes in regards to a kohen, shuma sheyesh baseyar, if a kohen has a mole and there are hairs growing out of it, harei zemum. Ein baseyar, if there is no hair growing out of the mole, gedola harei zemum, if it's very large, then it's considered a mum. Ketana ein zemum. What is considered to be a large mole? Says the Gemara, Piresh Rashbag ad ki isar ha'italki, a particular coin. Let's assume, I guess like a penny, a dime, maybe probably like a dime. Their coins are probably something like that, give or take, a nickel. I don't know. However, the size of an italki is, how small can a coin be? It's got to be enough to not get lost. So whatever it is, let's assume a dime, quarter, nickel, whatever it is, that's about the size of a mum. And if it were to be that the shuma, that the mole was less than that, then the din is that that's not considered problematic. People have beauty marks all the time. That's totally normal. Fine. These are not freckles, by the way, just to be clear. We're not talking about flat. We're not talking about things that are flush with our face. We're talking about things that actually protrude, and it has to be particularly large to be a mum. Amar Rabbi Yossi b'Reb Chanina be'omedes al padachta. What are we talking about? It must be that the mole is on her forehead, says the Gemara. Padachta ra'a v'nifaisu. If the mole is on her forehead, he's not blind. He's going to look at it and either decide that he likes it or he doesn't. He doesn't have to divorce her. He doesn't have to say that it's a mum. He can marry her with her shortcomings. That's fine if she has a mum on her forehead, but it can't be that it's smack in the middle of her forehead, because if it was, then it should be a mum, but he married her. So then so he can decide before they get married. When he meets her, he sees the mole on her forehead. So there's no reason for them to assume that they're going to not get married. If he says, I still think you're beautiful, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, then you're doing well. Omar Rav Papa, be'omedes latachas kipa shel rosha. No, whatever hair covering she has, it's kind of covering a little bit. So let's say it was right at the top of her forehead, and she wears her hat like this, so you can't really always see it. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. So maybe the husband, the fiance, they're on the first date. He's like, maybe there's a mole there. I'm not really sure because her tichel is kind of covering a little bit. So then he can decide. Back in the day. Yeah, back in the day, exactly. Oh yeah, it's probably standard. Well, yes, you would. Yes, you would. That's how it was. That's how it was. I don't know. When did it stop? I have no idea. I don't know. So you'll have more bam kashas in about 2 minutes. So Amar Papa, that it's underneath the kippah. Amar of Chizda, Hamil Samigavra Rabba Shmieli. I heard something amazing from a great person. Who was the great person? Umanu, that was Rav Shila. Nashcha Keleb, if a person was bitten by a dog, V'nasim Akomot Salekes, and there was a scar, Harezemum. Everybody has scars. Everybody has scars. I just, my son, over the summer, my son Usher got a cut in his leg. And it was a jagged line. The guy did stitches. He did a fine job. But Lamai said there's going to be a scar. It's just the way things are. Is it Dafka a dog? It's not Dafka dog. It's if there's a scar. It doesn't look nice. It's not attractive. So then that's going to be considered a mum. Amar of Chizda, Kol Ava Be'isha. If you have a very thick voice for a woman, what we would call a very deep voice for a woman, Harezem mum. If she has a very deep voice, then that is considered a mum. Why? Shenemar ki kolech arev. Because she's supposed to have a sweet voice. I just recently saw this in writing. I'm reading a book now on body language and voice and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, this book writes that our psychologies, when as men, we typically try to be a little deeper with our voice, completely subconscious, because that has the tones of masculinity. And the more seductive, airy, high-pitched voices are seen as more appealing for women. So you'll see that there are classic gender lines, which is why when people are confused about their gender, they often swing to that side of the pendulum, whatever it may be, in order to match what they're trying to do. So anyways, this woman's voice should be not deep. It's otherwise considered a mum. The Gemara then speaks about the dadim of a woman's breasts, and the Gemara says, Tani Reb Nasan Bira, Bein Dade Isha Tefach, that between the two breasts there should be one tefach, but there's a machlokes of whether or not this is positive or negative. Savar of Acha Berei de Rava Kame de Ravashi Lememar Tefach Lema Al Yusa. This is considered a good thing. Amar Le Ravashi Gabe Mum and Tanya. It's a mum. It's a mum, and that's okay. So that's a mum. That means that this woman is going to be considered not marriageable. Vikama, what is considered to be positive, or what is considered to be a tefach in this particular case, bein shnei hadadim. So Amar Abai shalosh etzbot. The Gemara then says, Tanya Reb Nasan Omer Kol Isha shedadeha gasin mishel chaverta bein chavroseh. One woman has a larger dadim than her friends. Harezemu Vikama. How much more should the dadim be to be a psul, to be a mum? Amar Reb Maisha bar berei de Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi mishmed Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi tefach. And if there's a difference of a tefach, how we measure, the Gemara doesn't say, and the Rishonim on the page don't talk about it, then that's considered a psul. Says the Gemara, Mi'ika ki gavna, is there really such a difference between the dadim of women? Says the Gemara and the Gemara tells a little bit of an anecdote. Damar Rabba bar Chana, ani reisi aravya achas, there was one Arab woman, sheivshila dadeha le'achoreha v'inikas bana. She had such large breasts, she was able to feed a child behind her with her breast. That's what the Gemara says. So the art scroll quotes the Maharam Shif, and I needed something to say on this topic because I just can't walk away from this because I have no idea what the Gemara is talking about. And the Gemara says, the Maharam Shif writes in the back here, this isn't about beauty. We don't know, he doesn't say what it is about, but it isn't about beauty. Because he said, if it is about beauty, then if a woman is ugly, that should be a mum. Just done. You're not attractive? Yeah, done. Adds a mum. So it's not clear exactly what's going on in the Gemara. I haven't spent more time than looking up the Maharam Shif and one other thing, but nothing that really indicated a lot of what was going on. Although Rashi here does seem to say that it is talking about beauty of some kind. Let's find that Rashi, Lima al Yusa. It's about 20 lines or so from the bottom of the page, 4/5 of the way down. It's considered attractive or appealing for the dadim to be separated from one another. Everybody do your own research. I don't know exactly how to otherwise qualify the Gemara. Let's get back to the reservation. The Gemara says, Uletzion Yomar ish ish yivaled vav hu yichon elyon. We'll see in a moment that this is going to be explained. This pasuk will be explained by the same person who was explaining to us about the dadim of an isha, and that is Rav Maisha. And this pasuk speaks about ish ish and Sion. So says the Gemara, what is this talking about? Amar Rav Maisha bar berei de Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi. Echad hanolad ba. Someone who's born in it, someone who's born in Eretz Yisrael, or ve'echad hametzapelir osa, or for someone who is mitzapelir osa, who pines to see Eretz Yisrael. Those are the people who, in the pasuk, v'hu yichon neha elyon, they'll be the ones who will be able to establish Eretz Yisrael. Beautiful Gemara. Amar Abaye, v'chad minayhu adif kitrei minan. One person from Eretz Yisrael is better than any two from Bavel. Amar Rava, but v'chad minan, one of us, kisalik lahasam, if we make aliyah,
and the Gemara doesn't use that language. Adif Kitrei Minaihu. If one guy from Bavel goes up to Eretz Yisrael, then that one guy who makes Aliyah is better than two Eretz Yisrael people. Rav Yirmiyah, when Rav Yirmiyah lived in Bavel, lo hava yade my kamre rabban. He didn't know what was going on in yeshiva. By the way, I don't believe that. This is Rav Yirmiyah. He's quoted throughout Shas as a massive Talmud Chacham. Let's just call him the lower end of the totem pole, just for the sake of this conversation. He didn't know as much as everybody else in yeshiva. And then when he moved up to Eretz Yisrael, he started giving scathing rebukes to everyone who's in Eretz Yisrael, everyone who's in Bavel, and he said that you guys don't know what you're talking about. All right, so that was the sugya primarily of Mumin. We're going to continue a little bit, which is in regards to the timing of when Mumin began. And we know, of course, there's two phases. There's a phase of when a woman is still single, living in the home of her father, and the phase of when she's married, when she is now living in the home of her father-in-law or in her husband's home. And the Gemara wants to know, and the Mishnah is going to be dealing with now, when these mumin were identified. 4 lines from the bottom of Ayin Hey Amud Aleph. We'll be learning to the top of Ayin Vav Amud Aleph, and then the next day is a little bit of a shorter block. Let's jump in. And we may learn a little bit extra tomorrow night and the next night, so just kind of compensate for the weekend, but we'll speak about that more later. 4 lines from the bottom, Hayuba Mumin. If she had blemishes, Ve'oda bebeis aviha, and she is in the home of her father, so that means it's a childhood mum. Ha'av tzarich lahavi raya, shemishinis arsa hayuba mumin halalu v'nistafcha sadeh. So what happened here? So Rachel gets engaged to Reuven, and as they're on their first date after they get engaged, so the husband says, Reuven says, "Oh, you have a blemish. I didn't know about that. Mekach tos." So says the Gemara, that would be upon the father. Ha'av tzarich lahavi raya, that no, this really wasn't a childhood mum. This only happened since you guys met. She lost a finger, whatever the case may be. So says the Gemara, v'nistachva sadehu, that the father has to bring the burden in order to make it that it's the father, that it's the husband's issue, and therefore the husband won't divorce his wife. But once she's already in the rishus of the Baal, and then he notices the mum, if he wants to get away with divorcing her, then what does he need to do? He needs to find some kind of proof that she had a mum from before they were married, and therefore, that's what Rav Meir says. However, the Chachamim aren't buying it. The Chachamim Omer, bottom line, that's only true in regards to mumin that are covered by her clothing. However, if there's a mum on the outside of her skin, because they went on a couple of dates, you have to see the girl before you get engaged. Okay, so today we date for too long, but back in the day, they met each other once with all the parents around, and everybody signed the t'naim and they moved on. So it says the Gemara, if it's begalawi, he can see her face, he can see her arms, that's it, and it was really pretty much it. And then he would have to then say, okay, you're beautiful enough, and then let's get married. And then says the Gemara, and if there's a bathhouse, remember we all have showers in our own homes, but back in the day they didn't have that, so they had these bathhouses where people would go shower. So in the women's bathhouse, if they had a women's bathhouse, so then then even something that's under her clothing won't be considered a mum. Why not? He'll tell his sister, listen, when you go to the bathhouse, can you just make sure that my wife is like normal? You know what?
Has 2 wives. Right?
Yeah, just normal. So, and that's what the Gemara says. So that's with bathhouses. Now the Gemara paints a problem, and we're going to have 3 answers to this, but we're only going to learn 2 answers today. The third answer is already 5 or 6 lines down on Ayin Vav Amud Aleph, so we'll get to that tomorrow. Says the Gemara, we have 2 parts of our Mishnah that leave inferences that are opposite inferences. Taima demaisi ha'avraya. In the Reisha of our Mishnah, we said that if a father's daughter Rachel gets married to Reuven or gets engaged to Reuven, and then he finds a mum, it's on the father. It's on the father to prove it. What's the inference from that? That seems to be then that the default is that we trust the husband. That's what it seems like. Money, whose shita is that? This is a shita we learned earlier in this Masechta on Daf Yud Beis, Rabbi Yoshuahi. Damar lo mipiha anu chayin. And Rashi details this case. We're not going to go all the way back into the sugya, but we learned about this sugya where a husband gets married and he sees that his wife doesn't have a basulim. So she says, that once I was engaged, I was violated at that point. Now, in the culture that we live in, those are things that you share. Those are things that you communicate. She didn't communicate it. So what's the din? If she says, Mishe'eras tani ne'enasti, so the husband, the morning after the chuppah, he goes to Bezdin and says, my wife doesn't have a basulam. And they say to her, no, what's the story? She says, I was violated after I was already engaged. So that's nistach v'sadehu. That's a case where that's his loss, nothing to do about it, just the way the world turns. So there, that seems to be like Rabbi Yoshua. The fact that we believe the husband by default and not the wife, that aligns with Shitas Rabbi Yoshua. However, the Seifa does not work out that way. That if the husband only finds the mum after they're fully married, then the husband has to bring a raya that in fact she had a mum from before they were married. And let's make the diuk on this second part of the Mishnah, Taima de Maisi Habal Raya, Halom Maisi Habal Raya Ha'av Mehemet. It seems from the Seifa that the default is that we believe the father and the daughter's side of the family, not the husband's. And who does that align with? Asan Rabban Gamliel, to Amar Ne'emenes, back to that Sugya and Yud Beis, where it seems to be that we believe her when she says Mish Erastani Ne'enasti. So what we're doing is we're trying to figure out our Mishnah, but our Mishnah has this chasm in it without any names in it. They're both stam. We don't have names in our Mishnah, but it seems to be holding of opposite shitas from Daf Yud Beis. So who's the author of our Mishnah? Says the Gemara, answer number one, Amar Rebbe Lazar, Tavra. Our Mishnah is broken, which is literally the translation of broken, Shavur. Taf and Shin are interchangeable in Aramaic. Misha Shanazu Lo Shanazu. We see this throughout Shas. We've already had it many times in Shas. And that is that this Mishnah is a problem. And the Reisha of our Mishnah was not written by the same person who wrote the Seifa of our Mishnah. We don't know who wrote it. We don't know who's right. We don't know who's wrong. But our Mishnah says that it's not the case. And then Rava comes along to just qualify something about the sheet of Rabbi Yoshua, which is that the sheet of Rabbi Yoshua from Daf Yud Beis is that we don't trust her, that when she says Mishe'eras tani ne'enasti, when she says after her husband's claim of a tainus basulim, and she says, no, I was violated after we were already engaged, it's not a mekach tos, Amar Rava, lo tema Rabbi Yoshua lo azil basar chazaka de gufa klal. Don't assume that Rabbi Yoshua never sides with the woman. Don't assume that. Because kilo azil Rabbi Yoshua basar chazaka de gufa. When is it that Rabbi Yoshua doesn't follow the chazaka of the guf? That's heicha deika chazaka de mamona. That is when there's a conflicting issue of chazaka de mamona, because the money for the ksuba is in the husband's property until he pays it out. And therefore, that's one chazaka working against her chazaka. So then we don't believe her. Aval heicha deleka chazaka de mamona. But where there isn't a competing chazaka against her cheskas haguf, also Rabbi Yoshua basar chazaka de gufa, then in fact, we do believe her. So it's not that Rabbi Yoshua doesn't trust her. It's that what was happening on Daf Yud Beis was that there was two conflicting chazakos. Chazaka number one was her chazaka, and chazaka number two is where does the money lie right now? Who gets the ksuba? So because the chazaka was by the money in his property, and by the chazaka it was against her, so it's head to head. Rabbi Yeshua sided that when it's a head to head chazaka that we side against her. But where there's nothing competing, all is well and good, and we do trust her. Ditznan. It says Tanya here, it's a mistake. The Gemara corrects it. It should be Ditznan. Im baheres kodem l'seyar lavan tameh. In regards to tzaras, if the baheres, if the skin mark precedes the growth of the hair on the skin mark, tameh, no question about it, that is considered tzaras. Im seyar lavan kodem lebaheres. If the hairs grow first, it's like the center of the bullseye, and only then does the white skin grow around it, tahor. Now, that part's not really relevant to us. What if there's a suffix? We don't know what came first, the hair or the white mark. He went to sleep, there was nothing. He woke up, there were both. And we have no idea which one came first. So Tanakama holds tameh. What does Rabbi Yeshua hold? Omer keha. The halacha of a suffix is the same as a baheres that gets lighter in color, and that is that it's mutter, mai keha, amaraba keha tahor. So what do we see by Rabbi Yoshua? We see that there are times that we fully lean on regular chazakas, and we would do the same for a woman as well. The chazaka is that when he went to sleep last night, he didn't have anything on his skin. We don't assume he's a bar tzaras for no good reason. So the chazaka works. This is a raya berura that Rabbi Yoshua, without a competing factor, will hold of a chezkas hagu. Here it's about tzaras, but we would certainly extrapolate from here to say that it then applies back to the case of an isha. That's answer number one. Just to go back, really, the answer number one was just the first few words of Tav Misha Shanazu Lo Shanazu. We had asked our question that we have opposite implications from our Mishnah, that in the ratio of our Mishnah, it seems to be that the Baal is Mehemen, and in the Seif of our Mishnah, it seems to be that the father is Mehemen, and answer number one is Tav Misha Shanazu Lo Shanazu. Answer number two is a little bit more than halfway down, almost 2/3 of the way down. Rava Omar, Resha Kan Nimtzu V'Kan Hayu. Sefanami kan nimsu v'kan hayu. What you see is what you get. In the Resha, when she's living in her father's home, what you see is what you get. She has the mum, we assume she's had it forever. If it's in the Seifa, when she already moved into her husband's house, what you see is what you get. She got the mum, she got it now. It's not from her childhood. Very difficult answer. We're going to have to analyze that. Says the Gemara, Esve Abaye. Abaye asks Rava, I don't understand what you're talking about. You're saying that whatever is that if in fact she only saw her mum the day after her wedding, we assume that that's when she got it. That doesn't work with this brisa, because nichnasa l'reshus habal, once she's married, habal tzarich lahavi raya, the husband now has the burden of proof. He has to prove sha'ad shaloti saris hayuba mumen elu v'haya mekcho mekach tos. The brisa said that he has to bring a proof. Says the Gemara, that's true from before they're married, but not after they're married. But why the amai? Why does he have to work hard at all? Why does he have to lift a finger? If it's true that kan nimsu kan hayu, that according to Rava, that once she moves in, she gets married, she moves into the new apartment, they're living in Winston Towers. They get married on January 1st, Aleph Tishrei, I remember your last criticism, Aleph Nisan. And then on Beis Nisan, and the next day, he sees that there's, what does he see? He sees that there's a mum. So kan nimsu kan hayu, this is a new mum. If it's a new mum, then why does he have to bring a raya? We know the husband's dead in the water, he can't divorce her. That's for sure. It's not divorce. It's not a mekach tos. Why? Kan nimsu kan hayu. But according to the brisa that Abaye just brought, it seems to be that Rava's wrong. Says the Gemara, Amar le, Rava gives an answer for his own shita. And we're going to distinguish here. Mishanis arsa, from once they're already engaged, mishum de'ika lemeimar, the reason why he can't recant on this marriage is chazaka, ein adam shose bekos, ela im kein bodko. Nobody picks up a cup of water randomly and doesn't look inside of it before you drink it. You're always going to take a quick look in the cup. In other words, you're not going to get married unless you see that you're attracted to this person. You have to be attracted to the person. I had this, Shaila, a young woman was engaged. She called me and said, I'm not attracted to the person that I'm engaged to. What should I do? So I said, I have no idea. Let me find out. I called my Rebbe. He said, you need to ask her 2 questions. If any of the questions are answered incorrectly, help her to break off her engagement. Question number 1, even though in theory it's usher to touch, are you interested in touching him? Question number 1. She said, I have no interest in touching him. I'm like, that's alarming. Question number 2, are you embarrassed to walk down the street with him next to you when your friends would be coming in the other direction? She said, totally embarrassed. So we scripted her breakup and broke off their engagement. She's now happily married with a whole bunch of kids. But you have to be attracted to the person that you're getting married to. So says the Gemara over here, Ein Adam Shoseh Beko Elim Kain Bodko.
So if he answered one,
I said, why are you engaged in the first place? And she said that her Moras told her that it'll grow on you. That's what she told me. It's from a stark school background. It's not how I grew up.
So they said either no to either one of those is enough.
Yes, correct. If you have no interest in physical intimacy, it's usher. You're not allowed. But in that phase, either one is very problematic. But he was using that as like the portal of entry into her brain. Like what's the litmus test for real disinterest in someone? It's a big problem. Okay, she's doing fine now. I'll tell her you say hi. So it says the Gemara, Mishanis Arsa, once they're already engaged, Mishum de Ikalamemar, of course, we assume that Ein Adam Shosa Bikosa and Ken Bodko, V'hai Rav and Efaisu. He saw her and they're married. So once they're already married, he can't say the mum issue. They're done. We know she has a mum. She's missing a finger, whatever the case may be, all is fine. You can't divorce her in this case. Says Abaye back to Rava, that should be true beforehand also. You wouldn't get engaged either. You're going to look at her before you get engaged. You're going to see if there's a mum. Rava responds, Ella, Amrinan, this is still Abaye. Ella, rather, I disagree with you, Rava. Amrinan chazaka ain't adam mefais b'mumin. It seems to be the case that someone would not be mefais b'mumin. b'mumin. Hachanami, we should assume nema chazaka not a mefayis b'mumin. So then Rava gives his final distinction between the case of mishanis arsa and the case of mishalonis arsa. 5 lines from the bottom. Ayin Hamid base. Ella mishanis arsa, from after they're already engaged. Mishum the ikatarte chazaka. There are 2 chazakas working against him. Number 1, she has her chezkas aguf hemad aguf al chezkaso, and number 1, that she has her own chezkas aguf, that she didn't have this moon from before. And number 2, v'chazaka ein adam shose bekos elam ken bodko v'haraya v'hai ro'av v'nefaisu. So these are the 2 chazakas that she has going for her. Number 1, she has a chezkas aguf, and number 2, that he probably looked at her before they got married. Ma'amers, what are you going to say? Chazaka ain't adam mefayis b'mumin. You're going to say that a person is not going to be acceptable to certain mumin. That's just not true. And even if you say that, it's still havachada b'makom tarte. That one assumption is against these 2. V'chada b'makom tarte lo amrinan. And lastly, ad shelo tesaris, before they're married, hamar aguf al chezkasa lo ika lememar. You wouldn't be able to say that because he already saw the mum in this particular case. So my ika, what's left? Chazaka dein adam shosa bekosel and kain bodko v'hai ru'av v'nefaisu. So maybe he saw her. There was a mumin. He was okay with the mum, but says the Gemara, adarabba, no, chazaka ein adam mefayis b'mumin, that a person maybe they're not mefayis b'mumin. Maybe he would not be okay with the mum, and then the hemad maman al chazkasa, and then the ksuba outweighs that chazaka. So this is Rava's approach. We're going to stop right here at Rav Ashi. We'll pick up tomorrow with the 3rd answer to the opposite implications of our Mishnah. Wishing you all a beautiful night.